A lot of what we see in the market these days is people talk about ROI constantly.
Yeah.
Which I find quite unique, because if you look at most mature markets, no one really mentions ROI. It's just like, here is a property, it's the individual's responsibility to sort of figure out if it's an investment opportunity or not. So I always find that a bit of an interesting kind of unique aspect to the Bali market. But the other thing is Bali has this kind of lifestyle ROI. It does offer the ability for you to make a real estate investment that you can also enjoy yourself in one of the most desirable locations in the world.
Yeah.
When it comes to real estate, it's not an investment like, a bond or a stock, which is volatile to day-to-day kind of happenings. Real estate is more of a solid asset that you want steady growth in.
Welcome back to Betterplace Podcast. We are still with Thomas Butler, and in this episode, we're going to dive deeper into investment hotspot and what the future would look like for real estate in Bali. Whether you're an investor, property owner, or just curious about what's happening in Bali, this episode will give you some handful insights to help you stay ahead. And, when we talk about Bali, as you said before, the most part that get the most attention is the Badung area, right? But there's like a plan or something from the government to, also develop the northern part of Bali. And does it spark any movement in the real estate business in Bali, or nothing at all?
I would say it definitely piques people's interest. The Northern Airport has been spoken about for years.
Forever.
The new president has said that it is an initiative that will go ahead. But we've heard that before. So there's definitely interest there. Again, I think it's more of a long-term proposition. In terms of the numbers, we don't really see any spikes of activity. It's more sort of trickles of little transactions here and there, and general interest. So I wouldn't classify that as, like, let's say, an emerging market.
Okay.
Possibly something to keep your eye on.
Yeah.
More so. I think, again, contextually, yes, everything is contained within Badung. And I think maybe the idea of kind of we've got to find these like new areas. It's like, well, Badung, yes, there are a lot of developments going on. As I kind of mentioned before, a large portion of them are off plan. I don't necessarily think there is a great need to kind of go and explore all these other corners of the island and apply the same methodology that has taken place in Badung. Yes, if there is a distinct reason or kind of offering that is suitable for those locations, absolutely. But to kind of look at, let's say, the Ahmed region as the same as you would look at Pereranan, I don't think it really makes sense. It's a different type of environment, different offering. And again, there is a kind of historic infrastructure that exists here.
Yeah.
So unless that's really driven by key projects or government initiatives, I don't really see that taking shape for, decades, to be honest.
Okay. Well, when we are planning to invest in real estate, one of the important thing to consider is what we talk about, location.
Yeah.
But what are the other important factors that people need to consider before deciding to invest in Bali?
Yeah, so I would say the key one that we always sort of talk about, is context. If your frame of reference is, a billboard advertisement that tells you you'll make your money back in 3 years, and that's your context, you'll probably be disappointed. If your frame of reference is a global market where the kind of entry price is significantly higher and the yield levels are significantly lower, then you'll probably be pleasantly surprised. So I think it really depends on understanding the context of the market. Obviously, speaking with professionals, either on the legal or property side, is crucial to that. I also think it's about your objectives. A lot of what we see in the market these days is people talk about ROI constantly.
Yeah.
Which I find quite unique, because if you look at most mature markets, no one really mentions ROI. It's just like, here is a property. It's the individual's responsibility to sort of figure out if it's an investment opportunity or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I always find that a bit of an interesting kind of unique aspect to the Bali market. But the other thing is Bali has this kind of lifestyle ROI. It does offer the ability for you to make a real estate investment that you can also enjoy yourself in one of the most desirable locations in the world.
Yeah.
So it's not purely a financial investment. So I also think that sort of context and understanding the objective of like, well, am I doing it because I'm looking to kind of have the same performance as like an index fund?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it like, well, I'm actually some passive income that over the course of, let's say, a 30-year lease is actually going to perform quite well, plus the ability to enjoy and actually utilize that investment. That is a very different objective and kind of context to it as well. So I think those things before entering the market are really important to ask yourself. And then obviously, it comes down to location, the right sort of asset category, whether it be apartment, villa, the right size. And then obviously, is it sort of appropriately priced? Are the performance metrics reliable or feasible? That would kind of be the funnel or the journey that I would kind of suggest.
Okay. Now, in REID,
yes,
most of your clients, let's say they come to you, they ask for the data. The data mostly comes for like the analysis and like advices as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of them come for insight. Like, one of the key things about REID is that we're independent. We're not an agency. We're not a consultant. We're not tied to any developments.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we are an independent, objective voice in the market, and that's kind of our goal. So I will say a lot of our clients often say, can you tell me what's the best investment, or what should I buy, or what's going to happen in the next 5 years? We'll always say, like, look, we'll provide you what has historically happened, and we'll give you the context of the market, but we're not in the, I guess, business of projections or sort of providing advice per se as to sort of where to invest or what to invest in. We more so provide the guardrails for risk and opportunity and that contextual information.
Okay. So risk and opportunity, according to your data, what are the biggest risks when it comes to, investing in properties in Bali?
Yeah.
What are the main issues?
Look, I'd say probably one of the biggest risks would be probably like in the off-plan market.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to know the developer you're working with. You want to know they have a track record. You want to know that they're building with all the right permitting. You kind of want to know who they are, because essentially you're providing the money without a tangible kind of result for anywhere from like 6 to 24 months. So there has to be a lot of trust there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, again, it's not to say off-plan projects are not good projects. In developed countries, they sell out incredibly quickly because they come from trusted developers who, yes, there's bank guarantees and lots of different mechanisms, but, that doesn't exist in Bali. So I think you really want to have a lot of trust with any developer you work with who is selling an off-plan project. Mm-hmm. I think it also is understanding that, again, kind of coming back to the idea of context and objectives. If, again, you're expecting kind of very immediate lucrative returns, there might be risk in that. that it's hard to kind of forecast and guarantee those things.
Right.
So there's, again, you might have risk of your frame of reference if that's where you go in and it underperforms. So I definitely think, building trust and understanding who you're purchasing off or purchasing with, and then B, what is the actual kind of final product and how will it stand the test of time in terms of operation or in terms of longevity of quality as well. I think, people often speak about construction quality here, and yes, there's the moisture issue. There also is, this is part of the ring of fire, so it's earthquake prone.
Yes.
So there's multiple construction kind of quality issues that you also want to make sure you're fully across. So I would say those are probably the biggest risks. Fundamentally, we always say it's quite a robust and healthy market. So the fundamentals of the market are pretty solid when it comes to demand. Sentimentality scores for Bali are always really high. So people coming here are always very happy. So that means there'll be the demand will at least be steady, if not growing.
Yeah.
And obviously Bali as a destination itself is a beautiful sort of island destination. So you kind of have that strong foundation. It's just being aware of what is it that you're purchasing in that location.
Yeah. Okay. And as we are talking about real estate, it's all about context, right? Now let's take one context where people are investing because they see an opportunity in having their own home in the paradise, but also wanted to have that nice passive income to, so the investment just doesn't go vanish in the air. Let's say like that. Do you think that people who are investing in either daily rentals or long-term rentals, there will be a lot of problems that comes with it? Right? We're talking about not just construction, but also you have to take care of the building. You have to make sure that the property performs well.
Yep.
And do you think that working with like a villa managing company would help with solving all those problems, or is it just another waste of money?
No, there's absolutely upside to working with professional management companies. It's actually quite interesting. If you look at the scale of the rental market, there's over 40,000 rentals in this market. So it is
40,000.
Yeah. Wow. It is a big market. But the really interesting thing is less than 20% of those are actually professionally managed. So there's obviously a lot of people who have holiday homes and they just kind of, they'll put it online themselves or maybe they don't even rent it out. So that's completely understandable. But it's really interesting to see that there is, I guess, this heightened focus on the investment opportunity within Bali. But then, an investment needs to be taken care of.
Yeah.
You can't just kind of invest in something, stick it on a website and hope that it starts to perform, because even let's say you do that, from day one, if you go on to Airbnb, the algorithm is not going to put you at the top. You're a new property, you don't have reviews, you don't have kind of a track record.
Yeah.
So you're kind of going to be
scattered
somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So already you're kind of maybe behind the eight ball a little bit. Obviously with professional management, they have different tactics and methodologies of increasing exposure. But then you're right in terms of the operational aspect. If you're doing daily rentals especially, you've got your cleaning, you've got your maintenance, air conditioners break. If you've got people coming, you've got this churn of people coming in and out all the time, you will have far more maintenance than the home you live in.
Yeah.
Because you're looking after that home day in, day out. You're not, who knows who's coming in. So the maintenance in of itself is a lot to manage, let alone the kind of exposure and making sure you're actually getting people to come and rent, and then also the right pricing tactics and all of those different things. And then you start to think about how do you elevate the property. So I think absolutely working with a management company, there's a big upside to that, and we can see that result in the numbers as well. So professionally managed villas do perform better than individually managed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, exponentially better, but there is definitely an upside to that. And then obviously, it does help that you can possibly start to push into that really top echelon of villas. The ones that do perform at sort of 90% occupancy, they tend to be professionally managed as well. It's a rare case to find one of those who is just run by someone putting their villa on Airbnb. So there's a strong case for professional management.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I find it interesting because all of this data when it comes to real estate in Bali, right? So I think the viewers are also interested if you can say and differentiate the characters of each prime location that we know. Let's say like Canggu, Prairana, Nyanyi, and etc. Okay, can we, get
a
into
little profile?
Yeah. We're very interested to know.
Yeah. So I guess looking at it through a data lens, something I think is quite interesting about the varying locations.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to sort of look at that kind of central and north Bedung area that I mentioned earlier, let's call them the traditional markets. They're actually quite homogenous in terms of, what they offer. They are pretty much sitting in like the 2 to 4 bedroom category, and they're all, not to say like same, but it's a pretty, it's the Bali offering. You come, it's a villa. There's kind of some design differentiation, but fundamentally they kind of all relatively perform similarly. They're all relatively same size. They're all relatively within a kind of key tolerance of one another. And that was, I guess, let's call that the foundational aspect of the Bali real estate market. And that was really great. But what we see, I guess, in newer locations is there's actually like some really key definition that's coming out. So if we look at South Bedung, so Bukit, that is really driven right now by smaller assets and a lower price point, and very much driven by a younger buyer demographic. So there's a lot of apartments going in down there, a lot of 1 and 2 bedrooms, and that's really like where a lot of that growth is happening down in Bukit. And that has a very clear distinction of like, obviously, great beaches, great surf, an emerging sort of lifestyle in terms of the F&B that's on offer around there. That's a younger sort of demographic that's emerging in that area. If we were to look at where we are now, Prairana, it's really defined itself as an upmarket, very chic sort of location. It performs a lot higher than the rest of all kind of surrounding markets. It also has quite a good diversity of offerings. It does have 1 bedrooms through to sort of 4 or 5 bedrooms. Right. So it does cater to different audiences, but not at sort of, it's not that high density, smaller assets. It is more of the, nice villas on a bit of land sort of offering. And then we also see markets like Nyani, for example. It is really sort of coming out of the ground as like a family orientated market. 3 bedrooms plus, yards, pools, much larger sort of building footprints and also land footprints. And that's, I guess you could say, almost in competition or a newer version of Sanur, which was kind of one of the original markets as well.
That is an interesting take.
Yeah.
Because we kind of close half our eyes from Sanur lately.
I would say that Sanur is going to have a renaissance. I think a lot of people are starting to understand that, okay, yeah, it's a little bit older, but
it has its own charm.
Exactly. It has the international hospital. It has the new shopping centre that's there. It has great infrastructure, like legit roads, legit footpaths. It's easily walkable. Okay, maybe the beach boardwalk isn't full of the coolest restaurants, but you still have a wealth of choice. There are still great places there.
Yeah.
We actually get quite a lot of inquiries about Sanur. It still is one of the top 10 markets. So, I think it will maybe go through a bit of a a renaissance. But I think, that family offering, which let's say the new market has not really tapped into, that's definitely getting more recognition as well now.
Yeah.
So Nyani is really tapping into that. I think Sanur will start to do that in the future as well.
Okay, and what about like Kedungu going over to Tabanan?
Yeah.
How's the market going there?
Look, obviously a lot of interest in the Kedungu market. I remember when I first arrived a few years back now, or when I first kind of came here full time, everyone's like, Kedungu is the new Canggu. I don't know if that's the greatest advertising ever, because that kind of speaks to like, okay, is it the new kind of traffic center? I think there's obviously a lot of initial interest. It does seem to be taking longer, which I think is a good thing. I think it will there's a lot of very large landholders over there, which some people might think a large landholder, they're going to do, really big developments, kind of reduce the character. Yes, you could kind of say that, but you can also say it will also establish a really good foundation for the market as well. So I think that's a positive for Kedungu. I think given, the influx that we've seen in already established markets and the kind of softening that's happened in the last sort of 6 months, Kedungu might kind of slow its pace of growth, but it definitely has amazing potential. There was a reason it was sort of, I guess, highlighted as one of the up-and-coming locations. But, the growth that we've seen, even somewhat pre-COVID as well, it's not the norm in real estate markets. So to think that will continue to kind of just perpetually grow at that rate, that's not the case.
That's not the case.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is growth. It should just be more steady, like a kind of consistent growth, as opposed to like big peaks.
Right. So there are pros and cons, right? It depends on where we're looking from the real estate perspective or from the community perspective. Because if we reflect on the journey of Canggu, it seems like it has grown so fast, so quickly. And of course, with the great growth, they have the consequences.
Yes.
And, the traffic, when it's rained, it started to flood a little bit.
Yeah.
Even in the most luxurious space in Canggu, you can see water coming up. It's insane. From your, observation, do you see how, like the government, do they do anything about it to control the growth in certain areas in Bali?
Yeah.
Or is it just,
Look, I think a lot of people in the industry here are aware of some of the more focus that's happening on some of the regulation in the market. The interesting thing is that the regulation has always existed in Bali. It's always had the zoning. You've had the sort of short-term hotel licenses.
Yeah.
You've had obviously the process has changed a little bit, but you've had the building permitting process. All these things have always been around. It's just maybe previously there was a bit of a blind eye turned to some of it. I think the government has sort of realized, like, hang on, we had those, regulations and structures in place for a reason. We should maybe start to enforce some of them, because I think people have started, there was a period of taking advantage of them too much.
Right.
And there is a potential negative to kind of just doing a free-for-all, anything for anyone. So in terms of that perspective, I do think it's actually good that the government is enforcing some of these regulations further. Comparatively, in a global sense, the regulations within Bali are nowhere near as stringent as other locations.
Right.
There's no development application process. There's very little sort of fire regulations, all of these things. So to sort of suggest that regulation is going to dampen the ability to do anything, I don't think that is the case whatsoever, because it's still quite a flexible market.
Yeah.
What I do think it will hopefully implement is people who are trying to possibly, base the upside of their business on avoiding regulations, hopefully they, will become more wary and maybe exit this market. But hopefully it will provide a bit more of a sustainable, thought-out approach to, to new development. I think an interesting thing to also consider within that, again, contextually speaking, this whole development of Bali in the villa market, it really started to take off around 2011.
Yeah.
And that was when Airbnb sort of entered Indonesia. So if we think about that in like the grand scheme of things, that's 15 years ago, when the concept of like developing for more than just building a holiday home sort of entered Bali. And obviously it took a few years to really take off.
Right.
Obviously the pandemic was a catalyst to kind of really jumpstart the whole industry. But, it's a really new market. Real estate is a very slow-moving industry. And this is still a new market. It's still finding its feet in a way.
Yeah.
So I think there is like a lot of things to consider when, each positive and negative kind of has its different take. And I think when you put it all together, like it being a new market, the regulations sort of slowly starting to be enforced a little bit further, the fundamental kind of reasons why this market is popular, when you put all that together, actually is quite a healthy, sort of stable position. It just needs to, that frame of reference, I think, is important.
Yeah. And also, it's not just about the law and regulations, it's about the reinforcement of the regulations, as well as we are really hard. It's really hard for us to see it's happening in Bali.
I think in time it will definitely happen.
Yeah.
Because I think, look, at the end of the day, even the foreign investors who come here, we're the visitors. We're the people who, yes, we can bring skills and expertise, but at the end of the day, this is, Balinese land, Indonesian land. And I think there does need to be a more kind of back and forth relationship.
Yes.
There. It's about respecting kind of local regulation and how the authorities want to go about, the development of what is fundamentally their land.
Yeah.
So that does require, again, a little bit of context and understanding from both sides.
Agree. Yeah. It's not just one hand doing everything. It's a collaboration.
It's a partnership. Yeah.
Partnership. Yes. All right. And you did mention that real estate is a slow market. So talk about real estate in Bali. What are the things that people most likely would expect and then fail to get when they start investing, and like what is the reality behind all of this real estate market that is happening in Bali?
Well, I think a really good kind of way of looking at it is like, the majority of this market is transacted on a leasehold basis.
Yeah.
Right? So most leaseholds are sort of around like 26 years. People don't think of their lives in 26-year periods. They think of it in maybe 24-month periods, if that. So that context of like, you've got a property for this period of time, it's very hard to conceptualize.
Right.
It's very hard to think like, oh, what am I doing in 25 years from now?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, so I think, when it comes to real estate, it's not an investment like, a bond or a stock, which is volatile to day-to-day kind of happenings. It is more of real estate is more of a solid asset that you want steady growth in. If real estate markets are volatile, that's a bad sign. It's not good. People will avoid volatile real estate markets. And so I think one thing that's always important to understand when you're kind of coming into the market is it's no different from real estate markets anywhere else. It is still fundamentally the same asset type. Yes, there's difference with, leasehold and freehold. However, that's not uncommon globally to have leasehold sort of purchasing opportunities. So I think that is important to understand, in that time scale. Real estate very rarely is the type of asset you can enter in and exit in, let's say, a few years and turn a quick profit.
Right.
Yes, there are sort of flipping opportunities that do happen. However, they're rare. They're not easily accessible. They do take a lot of investigation. They do take a lot of expertise to actually pull off. So there's no way a whole market can be like that. So knowing that when you sort of enter this market, to have more of a long-term sort of view, given that what you're purchasing definitely has a long-term view to it,
right.
I think that definitely helps and provides a bit of a foundation or a stability. Like, okay, well, I'm purchasing this and I have a 10, 20, 30 year time frame for it. That also reduces the pressure, because let's say this is a seasonal market, it is tourist driven. So maybe you might have one year that hasn't grown like the year before. That's not to say like, oh my God, okay, let's hit the panic button.
Yeah.
It's to say, okay, there's factors to that. Like we spoke about at the beginning, there's factors to, why, tourism might slow down or whatever. So you have to have a bit more of that sort of long-term thinking and be aware. And as I said, the beauty of sort of property within Bali, as opposed to, if you were to buy an investment property in a metropolitan city, I highly doubt that you're going to go to that and enjoy a holiday at your investment apartment, in Melbourne CBD. Whereas with Bali, you get that upside as well. It's like, why don't I take a holiday? I'm going to take it offline for a few weeks or a few months and enjoy it with my family. So there's an additional kind of what I mentioned before, like return that comes with that. So the timescale, I think, is a really important one. And if you conceptualize it or treat it like a more of a liquid investment, like a stock or a bond, it's probably not going to, it's not the same asset category. So it really shouldn't be framed the same way.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a really good point, especially for those, the people that are new into the real estate industry and they're just trying to figure out things out. Just make sure that you're ready to commit for long term and actually visualize what your life actually is going to be within those 20, 30 years of commitments.
Exactly. It's not a liquid asset. You can't buy it and then sell it like that.
Yeah.
It's no different to real estate anywhere else.
Agree. Well, Thomas, I'm very happy to talk to you, but I think we are very interested in, trying to figure and navigate the real estate market, trying to know what works and what doesn't. And companies like you, like REID, could really help people in getting all the data, the insight that they will need. But for now, do you have any advice or tips to all the viewers who would like to set foot on this real estate business in Bali, something that could really help them?
Obviously, the first thing would be to visit our website, realinfo.id, that we provide free reports. So you definitely can go onto our website and get a macro understanding of the market. We also do, offer sort of paid reports if you do want a more granular look at the market. So I think, the reason we started was access to information. I do think that is always the first step of your journey, is really understanding what you're entering into and what is happening within the market. Then, the key after that is really going to the industry experts, the agents, the property managers, the developers, and really engaging with them and building that trust and making sure that, they understand what's happening as well, and you kind of have a bit of a common understanding. I think sometimes, people coming into Bali, it's a very different market, and sometimes you're kind of just putting your faith in someone you might have just met.
Yeah.
So I think if you get some market information plus pair that with an industry expert, you'll definitely be in a much better position to kind of start that journey. And obviously, at the end of the day, there's a reason why people want to buy or invest here. And I think that's, it's a big decision as well. It's not a small financial decision. So kind of taking time, and enjoying why you want to do that is also important. You know, if it becomes this high pressure, sort of high performance sort of situation, then it kind of loses like, why was I doing this in the first place? So just get that, you know, foundational understanding, partner with the right people, you know, ask questions, be curious, be critical, and then, start it that way. And I think you'll be in store for a good outcome.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for your advice and insights. And I'm sure the viewers are interested to learn more about real estate market in Bali. As you all know, Betterplace, we also have like a market report that you can check on our website. And if you want to know more and really learn, you can visit REID to get. You also offer free reports, right?
Free reports, yeah.
Yes. And then I think that will really, you know, spark those curiosity out, and you can learn more, and then you can find out everything that you need to know about real estate data and reports in Bali from the website.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tom, once again, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Hopefully we get to meet you again
soon
and talk about more amazing things that is in this world of real estate in Bali.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and notification button so you don't miss any more interesting news about real estate in Bali. And we will see you in the next episode. So for now, let's say goodbye to our viewers. Bye.